Hey, can I speak to Todd, please?
That's me.
Hey, I'm Darren from Long Island Entertainment. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. You ready to get this started?
Let's get it over with.
Okay. Now, first off, what can you tell those who are unfamiliar with about artist entertainment?
Well, I can't tell you that much about Artist Entertainment. I can tell you that it's the company that I merged with, and my company was, or at least I sold most of the assets to Artistan, and one of those assets was Patronet. Another of those artists was my services, of those assets was my services as an artist. And then there are also some technological provisions in there. But Artistan is an online entertainment company that was started by, founded by Danny Goldberg, who is currently president of Artemis Records and used to be chairman of Atlantic Records and Mercury Records, president of Mercury, I think. So he's a guy who essentially, I guess we say, fell out the top of the music industry and that there wasn't any higher to go.
Right.
So he just kind of left and started his own label.
Okay, now going back to the Patronet thing, how did you first get into computers in general, and when did you get into computers to begin with?
I got into computers when I was in high school, which was in the 60s. And computers were a lot different in those days, but I had to make, I'd start thinking about career choices in case music didn't work out. And I spent a lot of time hanging around the Bell Telephone billing office. I was just fascinated with the idea of data processing. And it wasn't until a decade later that personal computers, or at least affordable computers, started to appear. And in 1979, I got my first Apple computer, an Apple II Plus, and that's when I got seriously into programming. About 2 years later, Apple marketed a program I wrote, first one I ever finished. And since then, most everything that I've been involved with ultimately has taken on some component that involves computers.
So pretty much with the original whole basic programming, you were into that from the start?
The whole, pardon me?
From basic to all the early computer applications, you're still familiar with all the stuff that you started from the beginning on that?
Yeah, I've actually could be, in some circles I'm known more for what I do as a programmer than as a musician. It was an interesting element in terms of timing in that I got involved in personal computers when this became sort of like the focus of a new generation. And a lot of them were not familiar with me from a musical standpoint, but when I moved to California, to San Francisco, it was for two reasons. One, to be involved in a more culturally vibrant city and music scene, and the other was to be close to Silicon Valley. As a result, I was going to a lot of conventions and conferences where all the young computer hackers used to go. I mean, hacker in those days just meant someone who really knew what they were doing. And many of these guys just had no familiarity with me as a musician until they might, maybe after the fact, see me playing in town, go check it out. So, yeah, I'm fairly serious programmer, but that isn't something that most people are able to evaluate.
With Patronet, what kind of future goals are you holding to it?
Well, at first it was purely out of necessity that I started to dabble in the concepts of, first of all, of using the internet as a way to get connected connected to your core audience. Second of all, using that core audience to supplant some of the more traditional sources of underwriting. And then finally, getting seriously involved in the technologies that are necessary to enable that to happen. So as a result, I think Patronet has three differentiators that we hope will become clear to everyone in the long run. One is that the idea, this is an idea whose time has come, and that is the idea of greater proximity between artists and their core audiences, not just the audience in general, but a particularly committed kind of audience, the audiences that were running their own fan websites and things like that. Now these people become essentially replace the record company in terms of getting you the underwriting necessary to produce what you do. Then there is the element of distribution that involves. You know, the ability, first of all, for these subscribers to hear what you do before the rest of the world gets to hear it in more conventional arenas of exposure. And that the relationship also represents a liberating, some liberation for the artist, in that they always know there is someone who has some appreciation for their music and is ready to hear it whenever it's made, so that you don't always have to think that you may possibly be exerting all this effort to make a CD that if the timing isn't right, the world will never get to hear. Finally, there is the mechanism that enables this, which involves sort of utilization of leading-edge technology to, first of all, improve the quality of what people get over what they would normally get it on the web, but also to create a clear distinction between the popular I don't want to say mythology, but the problem with the internet is that most people have begun to think that everything is free. It's much like commercial television. And if you're willing to look at a banner ad, then you can proceed to go on and steal copyrighted material for nothing and things like that. We want to create a clear distinction in people's minds about content that's worth paying for, the same way that you pay your cable bill and stuff like that. And Patronet, therefore, can be thought of as something different from the internet. If the internet is going to proceed to be a place where everything is free, if you're willing to fill in enough surveys or watch enough banner ads, Patronet is some place where you will sort of pay like you pay a magazine subscription or a cable TV subscription, and then become a member of something in which you get to participate, knowing that it's not free, but also knowing that you're paid up in full and can pretty much say to yourself, you know, if you pay your cable TV bill, then you can watch TV 24 hours a day if you want. You know? And that's the model that we want to kind of get people comfortable with, the idea that if you pay like a monthly, yearly fee or whatever, then you are in a position to morally and legally consume as much as you want, as opposed to the internet, where people are, in many instances, actually violating copyright law in order to get the things that they're interested in. And in many instances, I think if people understood the dynamic of what was going on, and you told them, hey, you know, I know you think the record company can absorb the loss, but this is, you know, Patronet is principally about the concerns of the artist. And we want to make sure that artists are protected. And so getting involved technologically allows us to offer greater control over the commerce and intellectual property, and therefore protect artists and also guarantee a quality of
moving on to your live show, because I believe your tour, Big Expectations for it. What should those who are going to, and this is their first time seeing Todd Rundgren, what should they expect?
Well, we usually, even the fans have been educated not to expect the expected. The unusual aspect of this will be the small size of the musical unit. It's just a so-called power trio at this point, in which case the focus is going to be on the guitar in a way that, well, hasn't been in the last several tours for me, and that I had been touring behind this bossa nova concept. We took out a whole cocktail lounge and did a little bit of guitar playing, but mostly just singing. And this is going to be, as well as me doing the singing, I'm going to be doing what I've had the past couple of years.
I noticed on the Craig Kilborn show that you did play in power trio format, but being that, it's just guitar-based drums, should, people that come to expect songs like Hello, It's Me, or even Bang on the Drum All Day, sorry to make reference to it, should things like that be out of the question?
Well, I don't want to give anyone any false expectations. It has been pretty much understood amongst all of my current following that you don't go to a show, at least if you haven't heard anything beforehand, you don't go to a show with the expectation that you'll hear any particular song. And particularly not Hello, It's Me. There are any number of reasons for that, not the least of which is that I wrote the song over 30 years ago, and, it's like my way to Frank Sinatra. Maybe he didn't mind singing it every night, but I just can't continually sing the same song over and over again and have it mean anything to me, and therefore, why should it mean anything to my audience except a perfunctory, okay, I'll do it. No, I don't think that my audiences are satisfied with that attitude, that, okay, I'll do it just because you said to do it. My heart won't be in it. I think they prefer that my heart was in it, so.
Okay, and what specifically, you mentioned that you're used to touring with big bands. What kind of led you to using a three-piece on this?
Well, a big factor was that a lot of the guys that I usually go out with had conflicts this time. In some cases, better offers, or offers that would, allow them to do something that, the gig with me wouldn't necessarily have allowed. It was a tough decision to make because it means that I have a lot more responsibility. The larger performing unit allows me to just concentrate on the singing. Now I have to create all of that other noise and do it without flopping it all up. So there's definitely an element of challenge for me, and certainly the other guys in the band have larger responsibilities. We just don't have a whole band to sort of hide within. So
okay, now moving on.
I don't know that this is a commitment for the long haul. This is just something I'm going to try out.
Now moving on to the other side of performing, production. Now I recently spoke to Mark from Splendor and Brian from Bad Religion, all of whom have excellent things to say. Are any production duties scheduled for the near future or future in general?
Well, I'm going to be traveling for the next 3 months, 3 to 4 months actually, various things. And so obviously nothing scheduled within that time period. It's possible by the end of the year I will take on a production, but I would probably prefer to spend as much time as possible doing music of my own and also wrapping up some obligations that I've kind of fallen behind on. Like, I'm supposed to do a 5.1 surround sound mix of something, anything. But I've been kind of stalling on that because there's a couple missing masters that haven't turned up, and I was even though I think they may never turn up. I was just kind of hoping that they would magically appear, and they haven't, so I just have to get on with it. I have to, and unfortunately I Saw the Light is one of the songs, the very first song on the record is one of the songs where we can't find the original multi-track. So I have to finish that project up. I have to deliver music of my own to my subscribers, and being on the road, I'll be able to deliver, road stuff, but it's pretty difficult to write new material if you've got a hectic traveling schedule. So I'll certainly have material in my head by the end of the tour. I'll probably get some of that done, and various other odds and ends, just to try and make Patronet successful and deliver on stuff that I promised to people. So,
what's the future looking like for recording besides what you've mentioned? Are any full lengths in the works? I noticed that you had I Hate My Frickin' ISP, which it's pretty much getting around the internet right now.
Well, the odd thing that happened is that I made a big elliptical kind of trek away from the traditional record business way of doing things. It started, first of all, with not signing any standard record contracts, but only doing distribution deals for one or two records at a time, and building Patronet as a way to get the underwriting, to get the records made. So in a way, I was prepared to promote and distribute music only using the internet, and really just having records made in distribution deals kind of as an afterthought, because all of my core fans would have heard it already. Well, when I did that song, I Hate My Frickin' ISP, and people listened to it, the picture sort of changed a little bit. Everyone thought the song was so timely and catchy and stuff that it should really be promoted as a single. And when that talk started to get around, I had a previous distribution deal with Caroline Records that would have lasted 2 albums, at least 2 years. And we thought, well, if we're going to promote a single, it would be much smarter to have everything in the same basket. So at the very last minute, we transferred we essentially bought out the distribution deal from Caroline and transferred it to Artemis Records. So now, here I am back in the record business, with a regular album coming out of the, promoted by a real record label, and an actual single being promoted. I'll be playing it on TV, I'll be doing the Conan show and the Letterman show and all that other stuff, and it'll be distributed around the net, and it'll actually be serviced to radio. So here I am with a regular straight-ahead record promotion happening behind this, relaunch of Patronet. And it really isn't what I expected to happen. Although it does ascribe to my basic philosophy, which is that you should be able to rethink and redesign the relationship between an artist and a record label to be much more flexible and to incorporate factors like the internet, and to ultimately benefit both parties in that the label is not making a huge upfront monetary investment for the production of the records. That's been paid for by the core following. So everyone is getting something. There's less debt that's essentially being distributed around, and everybody is sort of getting something out of it every step of the way, rather than this, things being like a giant gamble. You spend 2 months or 3 months making a record. It doesn't come out often these days until almost a year later after the record is done. And then if it doesn't click, if it doesn't find acceptance in the mass media, then you just go back to go. You start all over again.
Okay, and because we're just about at the time limit, one last question for you. Now, you can answer this in any way you possibly want, and you can answer it as long as short as you want. Any last words for the kids, Todd?
Jeez. Last words for the kids, okay? Tell them to throw away Napster. It's just going to get everybody in trouble.
Okay. But, okay, thanks a lot for that. But I actually, as I mentioned before, I hate my freaking ISPs all over Napster.
Yeah, well, I would assume such. The whole point is that that song is one we've chosen to give away. The problem with Napster is that they just declare that all music should be given away. And some artists live off of it. Like I tried to emphasize at the beginning, it's not just record labels. It's artists, and if the artists don't have an opportunity to get paid to make music, they'll stop making it. And if you think your neighbor next door is good enough to make music that'll satisfy you, then go ahead, steal artist music and give it away to your friends, because pretty soon you guys will have to make all the music yourself.
Okay, just something I thought was really cool. As I mentioned before, I interviewed Brian Baker from Bad Religion a couple weeks ago. Is it true you recorded the album on a G2?
G3. Yeah, I don't know that there is a G2, but maybe there was. I guess that was the first Power PC. Essentially, it was all done with Pro Tools, yeah. And as a matter of fact, we never used a guitar amp. We used this thing called Amp Farm by Line 6, which is a plug-in for Digit-Design Pro Tools. And it was great because we didn't have all of that cabinet switching and mic moving and the other kinds of knob twiddling and the kinds of crap that really slows down guitar overdubs. So, yeah, it was recorded all in a G3 computer.
Because that's definitely, I think, one of the better albums out there. What do you think of it?
Well, I think that they made a terrific effort to expand their audience and do what was necessary. After 15 years, you have to realize that, a lot of your core audience grew up with you, and now they're, in their 30s with families of their own and stuff like that. You can't keep singing like you're 15 years old. You have to start to broaden your issues a little bit, to include the audience that grew up with you.
So did you have anything to do with, the songs on there like I Love My Computer, which is kind of knocking...
It's like I Hate My Freaking ISP, isn't it?
Yeah.
Nothing directly to do with it. Greg writes most of the material, so I did encourage him to stop assuming that his audience wouldn't be able to listen to a wider range of topics, and I think that's why some of the material got incorporated in there. It was purposefully just a little bit more far afield than the I'm a lonely, upset teenager kind of stuff. Thing about
Okay, well, once again, I know you got to save your voice because.
I'm just starting rehearsals today. I don't have to save my voice until next week.
Ah, gotcha. Well, regardless, I'm sure you're on the run because you're Todd Rundgren, man.
Yeah, right.
Paltrocast.